You ever ask a chatbot a question and get an answer that's just completely bonkers? Like totally made up? Well, there's this incredible technology that's fixing all that. It's turning AI from a kind of forgetful student into a brilliant researcher with a perfect memory. And today, we're going to break down exactly how it does it.
All right, so let's get right into it. The number one problem with most AI chatbots is this thing called hallucination. It's just a fancy way of saying they make stuff up. See, they're designed to sound confident and helpful, even when they have absolutely no idea what the real answer is. But why don't they know?
The reason is actually pretty simple. A standard large language model, an LLM, its knowledge is static. It only knows what it learned from the giant pile of data it was trained on. And that data is basically a snapshot of the internet from months or maybe even years ago. So anything new, anything that's happened since, or any private data it never saw, it's a total black box to the AI.
And that's where our solution comes in. It's a technology called Retrieval Augmented Generation, or just RAG for short. The easiest way to think about RAG is like giving the AI an external brain, a live, direct connection to any information you want it to have, whether that's today's news headlines or your company's super secret internal documents. This is probably the best analogy for it. A regular chatbot? It's like it's taking a closed book test. It has to answer every question purely from memory, and if the answer wasn't in its training data, well, it's forced to guess. But a chatbot with RAG, it gets an open book exam. Before it says a word, it can look up the correct, most up-to-date facts, making sure its answer is grounded in reality, not just a fuzzy memory. So, at its heart, RAG is a pretty straightforward process. First, it retrieves the relevant info from some outside source. Then, it augments the original question with that info. This whole package gives the AI all the context it needs to generate a response that's not just smart, but accurate and based on stuff you can actually verify.
Okay, so how does an AI look up information? I mean, it's not reading a book like we do. It's all about math, meaning, and some seriously clever tech. Let's pop the hood and see how the engine works. Everything kicks off with something called embeddings. This is a wild process of turning words and sentences into long strings of numbers, called vectors. But here's the magic part. These numbers capture the meaning of the words. So in this kind of weird, high-dimensional map of language, the coordinates for cat would be right next to the coordinates for kitten, but miles and miles away from the coordinates for car.
And these embeddings, they're the fuel for something called semantic search. Now, this isn't your old-school keyword search. Semantic search looks for matching meanings. So if you ask about a furry feline companion, it's smart enough to know you mean cat because their embeddings are so close. It's a search that actually understands what you're trying to ask.
So where do all these number-based embeddings live? They live in a vector database. You can think of this as a super high-speed library built for one purpose: to store and sift through millions, even billions of these vectors to find the closest match in the blink of an eye. It's the powerhouse that makes this whole search for meaning thing possible. So let's put all the pieces together. You ask a question. That question gets instantly turned into an embedding. The vector database then zips through all your documents and finds the chunks of text with the most similar embeddings. Then that relevant text gets bundled up with your original question and handed to the LLM. Now the AI has everything it needs to give you a smart, fact-checked, and genuinely helpful answer. But, of course, the story doesn't end there. Standard RAG is already a game changer, but it's evolving to become even more intelligent. We're moving from a system that just finds information to one that actively reasons about it. And that brings us to agentic RAG. Look, if standard RAG is like a junior research assistant who goes and finds articles for you, agentic RAG is the senior researcher. It doesn't just find the articles, it reads them, it validates the sources, it cross-references the facts, and then it hands you a verified summary. It's RAG with a layer of critical thinking. And you can really see the difference right here. On the left, you've got what we call naive RAG. It's a simple, straight line. Query in, chunks out, answer generated. But look at the right. Agentic RAG puts an agent in the middle of the process. An agent that can use different tools, check multiple sources, and actually make decisions before it passes anything along to the main AI. It's an intelligent gatekeeper. So what's going on in this agent's mind?
Well, if you ask it a really complicated question, it might break it down into smaller sub-questions to search for each one individually. Or if it finds two documents that contradict each other, say an old company policy and a new one, it's smart enough to check the dates, validate the source, and use the most recent, authoritative one. It makes sure only the best info gets through. And for the really, really complex stuff, there's even GraphRag. This is an advanced version that's perfect for things like scientific research or financial analysis, where the connections between data points are just as important as the data itself. It literally maps out a web of relationships to find those hidden insights you'd never see otherwise.
Okay, so that was a lot of tech. Let's bring this all back down to earth. What does this actually mean for us in the real world? How is this technology being used right now to make our lives easier and our AI more trustworthy?
The truth is, the applications are popping up everywhere. It's that internal company chatbot that can finally answer your question about vacation policy by looking at the latest HR handbook. It's the customer support bot that gives you the right troubleshooting steps because it's reading the correct product manual. It's even how an AI can give you a perfect summary of a news story that literally just broke 5 minutes ago.
When you boil it all down, this is what you need to remember. RAG is the tech that upgrades AI from just a fun conversationalist trying to pull answers from a fading memory into a powerful reasoning tool with the entire world's, or your company's, knowledge right at its fingertips. It's the bridge from AI being a novelty to being an indispensable, trustworthy tool. And that leaves us with a pretty big question. How will we change when we can have a perfect conversation with all of our knowledge?